Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for those who are joining us on the East Coast. I'm dialing in from Los Angeles today. My name is John DiGilio, and I'm the Senior Director of Research and Intelligence at LAC Group. I'd like to welcome you all to today's session, Driving Usage of New Tools, Lessons Learned. Today's session is hosted by the Law Librarian Society of Washington, D.C. Before we jump in, I would like to remind everybody who is dialing in to please do mute your phones if you're not speaking. It'll cut down on any background noise. And then I would like to go ahead and introduce both our session and our speakers. When law firms buy technology or create resources people don't use, everyone loses. But getting attorneys and their case teams to actually use the right new resource at the right time is challenging. Technology is part of the problem, but it can also be part of the solution. As I said earlier, my name is John DiGilio, and I'm your moderator today. Formerly, those of you who know me may remember I've worn quite a few hats in the legal industry. In my over 20 years of being part of this industry, I was the former manager of National Research Services for Reed Smith. I was associated with Kirkpatrick and Lockhart, Thomson Reuters, and most recently, I've been serving as the Senior Director of Research and Intelligence here at LAC Group, where I run a rather large team of research professionals who handles virtual research support. So technology has been part and parcel of what I've done for most of my career. If you've ever read anything I've written, you know I often like to say that technology is a double-edged sword. It can make our jobs exciting and easier, and it can help us show our value, but it also poses very unique challenges when it comes to not only getting our own heads around how to best use technology, but how do we drive usage among our end users, the attorneys, paralegals, and others. The days of, as I used to call it, the field of dreams mentality, the if you build it, or in the case of technology, if you buy it, they will come, we know are long over. We really have to give people a good reason to not only use the technology that we purchase or that we make available, but again, to make it part and parcel of what they do on a regular basis. Today, we have two wonderful speakers who can tell us the lessons they have learned in driving usage. First and foremost, we have Catherine Bernard. Catherine is the U.S. litigation support lawyer at Mayer Brown. She's a member of the firm's knowledge management department. She uses her extensive complex litigation experience to help the firm's litigators efficiently generate work of the highest quality. Her practice focuses on the development of instructive practice guides and forms for all stages of litigation projects in federal and state courts. Catherine also works with the firm's electronic discovery services and IT departments to develop and implement technology that allows the firm's lawyers to better leverage each other's knowledge and promote the full application of the firm's resources in serving client needs. Welcome, Catherine. Also with us today, we have Anna Monroe, COO of Pacer Pro. Anna graduated from UC Berkeley with a double major in biology and Russian and a minor in Spanish. She has her JD from New York University School of Law and an LLM in Chinese law from Peking University. Anna started practice at a London firm advising foreign banks and foreign state-owned enterprises on U.S. securities law. She then transitioned to Beijing, where she advised the Chinese government on oil and gas regulatory matters. Anna read her first legal brief at the age of 12, got her first law job at 18, and joined Pacer Pro after attending the 2014 AALL conference with her brother, the CEO of Pacer Pro, and seeing firsthand how much end users loved what he had built. Now, both Catherine and Anna are NYU law graduates with their JDs. Both started out in big law as traditional lawyers. Now, Catherine is a PSL, and Anna has gone to the tech side. So today, we are going to hit them with a number of questions regarding their own experiences in driving usage. Catherine will be focusing on her rollout of West KM at Mayor Brown, and Anna will be talking about her experiences with Pacer Pro. So again, I'd like to welcome both of our speakers. I'd like to welcome all of you. One last reminder to our dial-in folks to mute their line. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and start throwing questions out to our panelists today. Let's go ahead and start with Catherine. Catherine, how did you learn about new tools when you were practicing?
I generally learned about tools in, I guess, 3 different ways. One is that the existence of tools would be announced to us, sort of by fiat. Sometimes we got warning in advance, sometimes we didn't. I learned about them when I consulted with Lexis and Westlaw reps. And then, excuse me, I learned about them from more senior lawyers on some of my teams. So, for example, they would say something like, well, we're going to use case map on this matter. And I would, nod knowingly as if I knew what case map was while surreptitiously writing down case map, which I would then look up later, which is what you do when you're a new associate. So those would be the 3 ways.
And, do you think that was an effective approach for you?
Yes and no. I mean, this was in, 2003, 2004, 2005, when a lot of these technologies were still really developing, and some of the platforms we use now didn't really, there was no social media really, or at least not that I used. So I think they were reasonably effective in terms of the availability of the information. I don't know if it was always available effective in terms of messaging, which is a whole other issue.
Mm-hmm. And Anna, you've had some really interesting practice experience, working with Chinese law in particular. How did you learn about new tools?
Well, so I guess in the law firm context, and in some general background, I started out with a London firm. And the old school London firms have a very strong tradition of knowledge management. So it's everything where they sit junior associates with more senior associates and partners in the same office, so you can listen to them on the phone talking to clients. We also have professional support lawyers who will then practicing attorneys who then go over and they write things like model forms. And model forms are just amazing. It's like what you can get with PLC, except that it's your firm's best experience, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure. And for these types of in-house tools, firms didn't do a lot to advertise them to us. They said, here are the model forms, here's one tells you how to structure a Dutch trust, whatever, right? But they also didn't really need to, because the value of a document that has been vetted by your professional support lawyer and by the partner in your practice group that walks you through step by step how you're going to do a deal doc was sort of immediately valuable. It spoke directly to what I thought my role as an associate was, right, to draft and negotiate. So they basically reference them, and as soon as you hear about them, you get into the document management system. I would print them out. If I had downtime, I would read them. The second set of tools were, of course, the software tools. And software tools, in my opinion, were not part of my job, right? If it was Westlaw or Lexis, then, of course, it was important to know how to use that, but you'd want to call one of the reps and have them walk you through any new task. And if it was any other type of software tool, that was my secretary, it was my paralegal, it was the IT team. And I think our firm, of course, got frustrated with all the attorneys blowing off trainings every chance they got. So when we brought on a new session, or I think it was a new office, was a new operating system of some sort, what they decided to do to us was they threatened to cut off our access to our document management system if we did not attend training by a certain date. And that was extremely effective at getting attendance. The one problem with it was that they did decide to do, I want to say that the thing was 3 hours. That may have only been an emotional feeling. I think it may have just been an hour. But it was a really long training, and they covered everything that the new operating system did, right? And so you've got 10 minutes of that is stuff that I already know how to do. And then about 40 minutes of that is stuff that I don't want to learn because it's like Excel and it doesn't touch on my practice area. So by that time, I've totally checked out and I'm sort of staring blankly at our IT guy. And the rest of it was probably stuff that was pretty useful to me. So anyhow, I attended, I got my stamp, and I did retain access to the document management system. And the thing that I actually think that's pretty funny in retrospect is I did have a very concrete need, which is I needed to learn how to format documents. Because for the type of work that we were doing, we were oftentimes combining documents from 3 or 4 different source docs, and you'd end up with a formatting mess. And my documents would crash all the time. And so the workaround that I had identified was I would work on my document until it started to crash too often, and then I'd send it to my secretary, and something magic would happen, and I'd get my doc back. And it did not occur to me at this training to ask a question about what the platform could do to me, because it did not occur to me that there could be a software solution to my problem, right? There was a human solution. I knew how that worked. It had its problems. I understood it, whatever. I never thought about it. And then I sat through this entire long training with everybody else, and nobody else asked any questions, and I totally blew my opportunity to ask questions. And the way that I actually found out, so there's that magic formatting button that's in the upper left-hand side of your words, right, was that my secretary was in my office. It was Monday, and we were sort of gossiping and chatting because we were friends, right? And when we finished talking about whatever it was we were chatting about, I had a quick question on formatting, and instead of sending it to her via email, she actually fixed it on my computer. And so I saw her use the magic button. And from there on after, basically I would always do my own work because it was faster, it was easier, and I didn't have to crash docs. And I also cut down on her workload because she wasn't getting these horrible things sent to her. And so I guess sort of my takeaway from that was that messaging is really critical. When you get a set of tools that talk to what the attorney thinks their job is, right, like our model forms, you're not going to have to do much. And when it's a software tool, what you want are very limited trainings that are very feature specific, and it's best if you can get them at their desk because they just want to spend that 2 minutes and learn that one thing, and then over time they can sort of broaden their knowledge.
Excellent, thank you. It sounds like it was quite regimented. Would you say it was effective?
Well, so I think the knowledge management aspect, like having the professional support lawyers, that was very regimented. And that was just awesome. Like, it was kind of a shock to me to come back to the U.S. and to realize that not all of the firms here were structured that way. And have people talk about partners who have, their best examples of past experience and they don't want to share it. The idea that you wouldn't be fully leveraging all of those documents, and every time, a new associate comes in, they start trying to reinvent the wheel. The software aspect was regimented, but I would say not super effective. What was effective were the other human beings, that our secretarial staff was super good at their job, and they really focused on making sure that we had everything available to us, even if we were obnoxious and, asked for things at the last minute and told them at the last minute we needed help on a Friday night. It's like they still would come through.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. I mean, very different experiences on both ends, and what I would like to do, Catherine, is focus on you for a moment as a PSL. Okay. You identified WestKM as a good tool. Why did you choose WestKM? And can you tell us a little bit about, how you went about bringing that in?
Well, so the situation with WestKM is actually slightly more complicated than that. I came on as I had been a litigator for a long time. I was an associate, and then I was counsel, and then this job was created, and I was interested in it. And I came into this role a little under a year ago, and there was an ongoing WestKM pilot, and I'm going to assume that everyone here knows what WestKM is, but if you don't, then I won't assume that. Actually, never mind. It's a tool that enhances a firm's internal content. And it's owned by West, but it doesn't really work the same way as West. So I was brought in and asked to sort of take over this trial because that, clearly fell within my responsibilities. And I started reaching out to the participants in the trial, and I discovered that not one of them understood what WestKM did, and none of them had actually been playing with it, and most of them hadn't gone to the training, and all of them basically had no opinion about WestKM. And that was very interesting to me. So I said, well, that means either this tool is terrible and we shouldn't use it, or there has been a failure of messaging. So I spent some time playing with the tool and trying to think from the perspective of a litigator, does this solve problems? Because that's what that's what lawyers care about. Does this solve any problems that I am actually having in my practice right now? If it doesn't, I'm not interested in that. Even if it's super cool and fancy and might, pay off down the road, I just have too much on my plate right now to deal with that kind of stuff. That's, to some degree that sounds unreasonable, but having been there, I can tell you it's not. It's not because I'm so important and I can't be bothered with these things. It's that you only have capacity for so much. Your brain can only hold so much information. And when you are full, right, the only stuff you can take in is something that's going to alleviate some of that pressure, right? You can't add to it. It's just not going to work. There's just no interest or incentive. So I played around with the tool, and it was my opinion that, yes, it did actually solve some problems that I had as a litigator. One thing, it was not good at some things, despite the fact that it is from West. It does not use the same search technology as West. It uses a much older and much less flexible and powerful technology. Why that is, I don't know. But so it was not like a cure for we use, like many firms I manage, and its searching capabilities are very limited. And so it wasn't going to solve that problem. But it did solve the problem where, as an associate, I would want to see a summary judgment brief from this, particular court, and if at all possible, a particular judge, right? It solved that problem, and it was good at that. It had some technology that was good at reading documents and figuring all that out, because that kind of stuff was impossible to search and iManage. I mean, you could cobble together a search string that would hit some terms, would return all sorts of other stuff. So what I did was I figured this out, and then I put together a script and a PowerPoint, and I contacted particular attorneys that I knew would be interested in this or would be influencers or had expressed friendliness to helping me on this kind of stuff, and I did webinars with them, and I was very clear about what the tool did. I said, it does 4 things. These are the 4 things it does, and I'm going to show you how it works. And as we go through it, I want you to think about, does this solve any problems for me? Because if it doesn't matter how great it is, people aren't going to use it. And when I put it that way, pretty much everyone I worked with agreed that, yes, it solved problems that either they had or that they had when they were associate, and now the associates working for them had. And so that was actually pretty successful when you set clear expectations. And instead of making them go to a training and then sending them off to try it themselves, I used the tool with them. And I had a script, so I knew it would work. Because, the worst thing is when you try something and it, quote, doesn't work, end quote, which usually means user error, right? But it just feels like it doesn't work. So I practiced, and on very specific things I was going to hit, so I knew it would work. Even though sometimes things fail, and even though the technology wasn't perfect, I wanted to show them what, the best, it's a tool in the best possible light. And I think that ended up being an effective way to do it. Ultimately, we are also working on rolling out enterprise search, and we're going to roll this out as part of enterprise search, because one of the other things I talked about with them a lot was, okay, if you learn how to use this tool, and then in a few months, you're told you have to do it differently, how annoying is that going to be? And the answer was incredibly annoying. I also asked, I said, it turns out that Lexis has a tool that plugs into iManage that may be better. Would you have any interest in that? And the answer was almost universally no, because for whatever reason, we're Westlaw. Our litigators are Westlaw people. They just don't. Everyone uses Westlaw. And I knew, having been a litigator, there was no point in trying to drive them to a tool that didn't look like the stuff that they want, because, you use these search systems, and after a period of time, it's it's like a rhythm. It's like instinctive, but you need to know where everything is, and you need to know what everything looks like and where you're getting it, and that allows you to think creatively, because sometimes it's really hard to find stuff. But if you're worried about, like, oh, do I press this, and am I selecting it right, and is this how I do it, it messes up your whole flow. So I knew that wouldn't work. And so in the end, we are going to roll this out. I think we have a fair amount of buy-in on it, and people's expectations of what it does are clear, which is what really matters. So I do have, if folks are interested, I can show you quickly, the script I used and the PowerPoint I used, if that's of interest. I don't know. I wouldn't show you the whole thing. I'm not going to run through the whole thing. That would be crazy. Should I do that?
Yeah, so it actually, I
Is that
added,
here? Okay.
yeah, you hit the next, it should pop up.
Oh, okay. Like this?
Wow.
Evidently not.
Evidently not. That was how it was
Page
supposed to
down?
work.
Okay. There it is. Okay, so I have this PowerPoint. It's WestCam's value for litigators, right? Yeah, okay. So I explained what the vetting rules are, how it works on our documents, what's in the test database, because one of the problems when people were doing it themselves is they were searching stuff and they're like, I can't find anything. And that's because they didn't understand what was in the pilot database. The pilot database was much smaller than our actual database. So, and then I set out what the four main functions were. Okay? This is what it does. Sorry. How it works. Oh, there you go. So these are the four main things it does. It identifies internal documents that are relevant to your searches. It extracts data and value from our documents, turns them into filters. It basically provides a shortcut to Westlaw for citations, and it also links you to relevant Westlaw resources about, names, stuff like that, like experts, which can be helpful in judges. West has some good, interesting reports they can generate about judges. Now, those last two things are available anyway. They're available in Westlaw. But, the idea was this provides a shortcut. And so people were pretty, liked that. And then, did we also load the script? Because I'll just show you what it looked like so you can see, how regimented it is, okay? So this is my script, and I practiced it. I did run through, so I wasn't just like, WebCam is a tool, I talked to them, and I, showed where I brought up the slides. That would help. Here we go. Okay. Four main functions, and then look, see, I have screenshots of what it should look like. This seems like a lot, but I have to tell you, it made it much easier for me to listen to the person on the other end and kind of figure out when they were getting stuff and when they weren't and what questions they might have. It really helped. And most importantly, it meant that I didn't have any technical failures. Because if you have a technical failure, that is going to color your attorney's perception of that product fairly or unfairly. So there you go. So that's the story of WestKM. And then hopefully, once we roll it out, everyone is happy. And I get pats on the back and, everything's great.
Well, that's awesome, Catherine. Thank you so much for sharing, so in depth. I think, many of us have learned similar lessons over the years. And what I would like to do now at this stage of the game is talk about some of the lessons we've learned and then have you all talk to us, about how this sort of plays through with you. And one of those lessons is that we know lawyers don't like to set up their own accounts, don't like to do their own back-end work. So, Anna, I'll start with you on this one. What kinds of back-end setup did you do in order to make it easier for lawyers to use your tool?
So initially, and I think this is going to have to be called a failure of imagination, despite having never gone to software training, my big plan when I came on to Pacer Pro was that I was going to do a bunch of software training. Right? I was real excited about the product. And I guess as some of you guys know, the CEO of Pacer Pro is my big brother, right? So this has really been his project. He's been doing this for 6 years. Every button on that software platform is something that we kind of love, right? So I was like, all right, I'm going to go out to market. I'm going to show people every button. This is going to be great. And A, of course, you had attendance problems. B, the worst of it was that people would watch the demonstration, and then if they go back to their desks, and even if they've been excited and interested, they would never log in. And so then I started to do much more, concierge trainings. I actually went to people's desks, and I was like, all right, now I've got 100% usage. If I spend 20 minutes at a person's desk with them, they use all the features, this is great. And I go back to our investors, and I'm all proud of myself, right? And our investors are like, well, that's not scalable. We're not hiring 1,000 of you to train every attorney in the U.S. And I was like, but I worked so hard. And, so the next thing that we realized was that for our service, so one of our bread and butter features is that we will email attorneys who are involved in active litigation PDF copies of their documents. So this isn't like a Bloomberg or Lexis or Westlaw litigant track or anything like that. It's actually the cases that they're in, and currently at the firms it's some mix of secretaries, paralegals, and docketing folks that are downloading and labeling. So we just automate something that the human beings are doing. And what we realized was, of course, that at the large firms there is centralized management, and if you work with the centralized management, you can set everything up. So basically, one email goes out to the attorneys that says, this has been bought for you. You have any questions, contact us. Nobody ever contacts you. And the next set of emails that come out is they just start getting the emails right in their email inbox with the documents that they have an ethical obligation to read attached. And there's no logins and there's no passwords. And that basically solved our usage problem. Then our investors were a little bit happier with me. One thing I would add in just about what Catherine was saying earlier, because I think that there is sort of this perception that attorneys don't learn about technology even because they think they're too good for it or because they aren't interested. The bandwidth issue was something that I felt really keenly when I was practicing. I remember this one Saturday night when I was in the office, and I had not left the office before midnight. I was leaving around 3 or 4 in the morning every single night, and we're almost to the closing of the deal. And it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning again. I was reading the shareholders agreement. It was supposed to be the final draft, and I was going to send it out. And I realized at some moment that I'd just been turning the pages. And I didn't know when I had stopped reading that doc and stopped making any edits. And so the only thing that I could do was start back at the first page and start editing again, right? And then you have a training on Monday, and unless they're training you how to breathe, you are not going to pay attention. My brain, I was dead. I couldn't pay attention. I couldn't learn. I was terrified that I was going to get asked to do something or write something new or draft something by my senior associate. I needed to be done. And I think that's kind of, I know I'm not natively good with technology. My brother is good with it. He understands it. He intuitively seems to, some magic happens. For me, it's an investment in time. And I got to know that there's a real prize at the end of that journey. Because otherwise I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, we have billable hours requirements, right? And so an hour you spend doing something that's not billable means another hour you have to add. And we have families, and we have people we care about, and we have sleep, and just I understand the world's tiniest violin is playing for the big firm associates. Okay, neither of us are saying, oh, poor us. This was so hard. Why were we forced to do this job? There are a lot of rewards to the job, but bandwidth, that's really the issue. And, when I was a younger associate, I would think, why aren't partners returning my email? It just seems so mean. How hard is it to type an email? And the answer is, once it falls off your screen, it's just not in your head anymore. And when you're reminded of it, you feel terrible about it, but you can just only do so much. And so going to an hour-long training is, for most, first of all, based on past hour-long trainings, that a lot of it's not going to be relevant to you. If you don't have an immediate use for the technology, it's not going to be that effective because you'll forget it, and it means it's an hour that you have, that you're going to have to make up at some point. So that's why I think we talked a little bit about this, but the two things that I say do is much work on the back end as you can for on-demand bite-sized training. Because I know now, if I'm using Excel and I can't remember how to do something, I just go to YouTube and I find a 2-minute video on how to do it, and that's how I learn it. And I could call the help desk, but that will take 4 times as long. Not to put down help desk folks. Help desk folks are great, but it's just an issue of time. So I think, doing as much as you can on the back end. So we're rolling out something now that will involve a fair amount of configuration. And, my first question we were having one of the calls about kickoff is, how do we keep lawyers out of the configuration part? Because if you are relying on them to set up their accounts, it is not going to happen for a significant number of them. We have all this information. Is there a way we can make these systems talk to each other? Is there a way, if the last ditch thing we have to do is ask secretaries to do it, how do we make it as easy as possible for them to do it? Can we give them like an individual, can we make a page that has their cases with with check marks, and they can just go and it's done, and then we take care of it. So thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say, you both really, have given us quite a bit to think about when it comes to bandwidth and capacity. And talking about the hour-long trainings is actually an excellent segue into our next question. We know, and I'm sure just about everybody in the room there was nodding their heads, that hour-long trainings don't work. I personally remember a day when you could choose some kind of fast food delivery, send out an invitation, and fill a room with 40-some attorneys who would sit there glued to your every word. Because of the various constraints that are put on our attorneys today, it really is a question of bandwidth and time. So, how do we handle this? Catherine, I'm going to start with you on this. What alternatives did you try, and with what success?
Well, the first and most important is, basically on-demand video training. And so we are working on a series of those. I think that's what the kids these days want. And it's honestly one of the most effective forms of training, I think. You have these little videos, and they have the words, and they show you what to do. It's pretty effective and easy. And if you can watch it again if you didn't get it the first time, and bookmark it, and it's helpful. Resource documents that show you with step-by-step instructions that are created. We have technical writers who create, with pictures and everything, and making it so that they are easy to find. That's actually a challenge sometimes. That's very helpful. And honestly, just trying to avoid the need to train as much as possible by doing work on the back end, by trying to automate systems as much as we can. There's a certain amount of training is going to be inevitable. And there are people who are just and there are always going to be people who just refuse to be trained, and that's all right. What are you going to do? They'll do things like, I had one partner who, before I took this job, called me all the time saying, like, how do I find something that I manage? And he was totally humiliated every time he called me, but he's still doing it. And now he knows he can't really do that anymore. I think he found someone else to do it too. I feel really sad. And I would say, this is just sad. You really need to learn how to use this. He's like, I know, I just can't. It's a mental block. But to recap, I'd say, on-demand video training, documents that the user can use themselves and refer to repeatedly that show very clearly how to do particular tasks. So task-focused training. And trying to avoid the need for training by figuring out what parts of the tool can be set up on the back end. I guess I should say, the other thing, this isn't in my hands, but trying to make the tools look as familiar as possible to people. Like there are tools that everyone knows. Everyone knows how to use Wikipedia. Everyone knows how to use Google. The more you can make it familiar to someone, the easier it's going to be for them to figure that out. I don't have anything to say on that, but
as a plan. Drive.
Yeah, trick.
Now, I'm going to throw the same question to Anna, but I do have one quick follow-up question for you, Catherine, and that is, I know quite a few of us these days are involved in the on-demand training, coming up with it and designing it. How long would you say your videos are?
I think a sweet spot is like 4 minutes, if at all possible. Really, you can break things down. And the idea isn't that you can teach someone everything they need to know in 4 minutes, but you can teach them about a task in 4 minutes, and that's what they're going to really need to know. That's what I would do. And I find the most effective way to do it are to have words appear on the screen at the same time as you're having some sort of animation or action. I always find those to be that, because some people are visual learners and some people learn by reading and some people learn by hearing, and that way you're covering all those bases.
Excellent, thank you. That is very interesting, and I think very instructional for a lot of us. Now, Anna, I know you do a lot of different types of training and speaking. What has your approach been to dealing with the fact that the old days of the hour-long trainings are over?
So sometimes I describe my approach as throwing spaghetti on the wall and you see what sticks. But we do, I think, several different options trying to hit different groups. As far as trainings themselves, when you are onboarding a client, you will typically have a couple of point people. So maybe it's the docketing manager, maybe it's a paralegal manager, maybe it's a librarian manager, and you'll spend a lot more time with them one-on-one so that they get comfortable with the system, and then they become the point person within the firm. And I think when you're looking at those trainings, my perspective is always that these are always long-term relationships. And so if you put more time in at the beginning, then you're going to get a better user experience going forward, right? Because somebody is really going to be expert in your tool and be able to help their team members. The second set are the on-demand videos. Our product guide says to keep them at 2 minutes, so we try and do that. Apparently, I always speak really slowly, it's apparently better to speak a little bit more quickly, just so I think it seems a little bit more dynamic. And then the third thing, actually, and touching on what Catherine said about keeping things very familiar. So one, we did focus on the email tool, because even the most senior partners know how to use email. They know how to use PDFs. And the next thing that we're really looking at in our development are, a lot of the firms are now building out SharePoint environments. They're working with companies like Foundation and Prosperoware. And what they're doing is really building their own internal environments. So you don't have attorneys having to go out to 14 different interfaces. You have your own curated set of tools. It's amazing what some of them are doing, right? Because you can have client-specific pages, you can have practice-specific pages, and then you'll have the 5 tools that are useful for that. And I think the thing that's also really interesting and cool about that is obviously that in the librarian community, you have a bunch of people who have a lot of information and expertise with regards to resources, how these software tools actually work, what their limitations are, what their strengths are, when they should be used for specific tasks. And the problem is that you can't have a librarian sitting next to every single attorney because there's not enough librarians in the law firm. But with some of these other tools, such as SharePoint and all the other things that law firms are building internally, you can sort of magnify your reach out. And so as a data aggregator, what we're looking at is if a firm wants it to go to X place or Y place, if they want it to go to iManage, whatever it is, we just want to push your information to you so you can decide what you want to do with it. That was all I had on that one, John.
Okay. Well, excellent insights. And, before we, sort of wrap with an overall, view of what it is that you've learned in this process, and we'll save some time, by the way, everyone, for any questions you may have. If you're live in the audience there in New York, Anna and Catherine will be there to, answer directly. If you're joining us via dial-in, feel free to enter your questions in the chat box of the webinar. But before we get there, I would like to talk to you both about messaging. And often we hear that messaging is key. So how did you explain the benefits of your tool to the lawyers and others? And, did it work? Anna, I'll start with you on this.
So with lawyers, we actually have a relatively easy time. So where Pacer Pro came from was the pain that my brother was actually experiencing while in practice of having to access Pacer documents. And so these tools, like Catherine was saying, there was a specific problem. He built a specific tool to fix that. What we do is when we're piloting it, you just show your phone to the attorney and you say PDF. And then they say, oh, yes, I would like that.
Yeah.
And then you say, great, I will talk to your secretary and paralegal and I will get you set up. We don't have to talk again. We're always here, love to talk to you, but we don't have to talk again. And then once there's an actual rollout, right, once you do the initial, you get the buy-in from the 10 attorneys that participate in the pilot. Again, that's just sending out the email and telling them that it's going to happen to them. Because I think, like Catherine was saying, you don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen as far as configurations. So what we do is we have an administrative console, and actually what we're getting back is more and more feedback from the law firms that the admins want more control to lock things down. So you can decide what the best defaults are, then you can have standardization throughout the firm. So that's been basically the approach, is to keep it really, really simple and stay away from, although I always want to do it because I always want to talk too much, stay away from teaching them the whole platform unless it's a junior associate who's really interested or somebody who's clerked and they're actually going to really use everything.
Great. And Catherine, same question to you about messaging. How did you get the word out and how effective was it?
So I'm actually going to answer that in a little bit of a roundabout way. My position is new to the U.S. offices of my firm. You know, as Anna mentioned, UK firms have been using professional support lawyers for a long time, and everyone knows what they are. And firms are starting to use them here. But it was pretty new to most of the people in U.S. litigation. And so before I could even think about messaging for particular tools, I had to think about messaging for the role and how to make sure I had credibility in the role. I mean, I'd been at the firm for a very long time, and that helped. So I had, you know, credibility, but how do I make sure that the role has credibility? And part of this job is basically to be like a lawyer whisperer, you know, to how to take things and like put them in terms that lawyers, and specifically the lawyers at my firm, because different firms have different characters. They do. That they will be receptive to, and how to channel their needs to, you know, our other knowledge management people and our IT people in ways that they will be receptive to. So, you know, it's actually really two-way messaging. It's not just to the lawyers. And so what I've tried to do over the past year is generate a fair amount of content that is useful, educational content, and then also things like forms and samples and stuff like that. And so every month I put out a guide to something every month. You know, this past one I did a guide to the evidentiary privileges. Before that I did a guide to deposition objections. So I think that's working, you know, it's helping. And then another thing I've done is I did like a listening tour, or I'm doing a listening tour where I meet with, you know, like practice leaders and sort of key stakeholders and stuff. And what they pretty much all universally say about messaging is that you have a very limited window of time to get across to folks what the point is of this tool or service or whatever it is that you're trying to introduce. And as I said before, they're quite, you know, what you have to show them is what it can do for you, for that person specifically, you know. And, you know, you can't, you know, you can't like send out individual messages to every lawyer in your firm, obviously. But you need to have a good understanding of the nature of that particular practice and its ebb and flows and what the problems of it are and aren't. And I think in general there needs to be more dialogue between like the staff side and the lawyer side of firm, so that they understand where each other is coming from. I don't know, you know, I'm not sure exactly the best way to do that. I don't think you want to like sit in a circle and pass the talking stick, but I think there's, you know, it's important to come up with something. Because I know, you know, I had a conversation with one of our IT people, the training, and, you know, talked to her about a bunch of these things, and she's like, really? That's what they think? That's who it is? I was like, yeah, I swear, you know, that's honestly what it is. This is, you know, if it doesn't come across pretty much immediately as something that could help me, knowingly or unknowingly, you're going to form a bias against it. You know, and some people are going to become obnoxious about it, and some people are going to be not obnoxious, but that's just what will happen. You know, your brain sorts into like useful, not useful. So you want to do what you can to make it seem useful. So, what's the point? I think the point is that there needs to be, when deciding whether and how to roll out a service or tool, obviously you need to think about the means of communication that best services the tool or service, and best services the firm, but you also really need to think about how it best services a lawyer at that particular stage of practice in that particular practice. You know, what kind of stuff is going on. And if you can't identify a good fit between the tool and that particular level of lawyer in that particular practice, don't roll it out to those people. Just don't. Because it's just going to get things cluttered. And it will lend to an idea that we have all this stuff and none of it's any good. Right? So I think there needs to be, more individualization and diversification. At the same time, obviously law firms are huge and your resources are cut and there are fewer librarians. So I really know that's not really helpful. I'm hopeful that, more firms will increasingly, have these knowledge management departments that I think can serve as really useful intermediaries in doing this, and in, basically getting the idea of what litigators want and need in terms of my job. I hope that's a helpful answer.
Very helpful. Both of you have given us. Both of you have given us so much to think about, and we've covered some really important points. So my next question, I'm going to throw it out to the two of you, and then we'll take questions from the audience. But through everything you've discussed, what is the most important thing you've learned in this process? And Catherine, I'll throw this one to you first.
Okay, that's a hard answer because I've honestly been in this job for less than a year. I think one thing I've learned is the importance of generating immediately useful content, and standardizing communications, branding them. Honestly, we developed like a little knowledge management banner, and now it goes on all my things, and I try to think my things all look the same. Try to have the ray lines convey, exactly what this is. Yes, I think. Basically, yeah. I mean, immediate gratification. Okay, so immediate gratification as a means of establishing credibility in the position or the role or the service. There we go.
I think that sums it up excellently.
How do you deal with a 2-year-old?
How do you do 2-year-old? Yeah, how do you do with a 2-year-old? How do you get a 2-year-old to listen to you? I mean,
gotta have colors.
Yeah,
gotta be pretty and
you're like,
shiny.
look at this chart, or something like that.
So, Anna, the same question for you. What's the most important thing you've learned in this whole process?
So I suggested this question, and I also don't have a great answer to it. I think the last 3 years, it's been one of the steepest learning curves for me, for understanding how firms work, understanding more of the business of law. Because as an associate, you're so isolated from, you understand your billable hours, and you understand what your senior associate and your partner want, and you don't know anything else, and you don't have any of this context. I think one of the things that has maybe been the most surprising to me is the human resource aspect of law firms. So one of the things that we do when we come in, because our tool hits primarily docketing, paralegals, and attorneys, is you'll meet with managers of each of the departments. And whoever our point person is, I'll ask them how the other departments handle their ECF notifications. And one of the things that has been really interesting is that sometimes you get very accurate answers. Sometimes people say they don't know. And sometimes people will say, oh, yeah, they do X, Y, and Z. And then you go and you talk to that person, they're like, I've never done that in my entire life, and that would be crazy. And one of the other things that I have seen just is, and then once you roll out the product, we do automate something that a lot of secretaries and paralegals are doing manually, right? So you can get the docs to people faster. And one of the things that we sell ourselves on when you're talking to, your CFO is, hey, look, you can reduce your head count in your document management. And so when you go out and you're actually rolling out, you do get people who will say, this is the writing on the wall. My job is going. you also get people who look at our software product and they're like, this is awesome. I never have enough time for, my judge research. I never have enough time to produce other types of documents. I'm suddenly going to have the time for all of these other tasks that I've always been capable of, but I don't have I never had the time, right? And what I've noticed as a correlation is that the firms where people know how the other departments work, they get really excited about the efficiency tools because they know that there are more needs in the firm that are not being met that they can meet. And the firms where people say this is the writing on the wall tend to be the ones where the people are isolated. Like, I don't see a difference in the quality of the people. Everybody who's at a law firm, you only survive if you are smart and you're really hardworking, right? Like, there's just a basic level of competency and everybody else gets pushed out. And so what I think is one of the really interesting, the law firms are under a lot of pressure. 2008 was sort of a wake-up call that as the Googles and the Ubers and they've all become more data-driven, we've got a very strong pressure to be more efficient. And I think one of the places where we're leaving a lot of value on the table is in our teams and in getting more of that knowledge sharing, whether or not it's the librarians or the paralegals or the docketing people, getting that communication to happen. And actually, just as one side note, but I interviewed Tara Eberhardt, who's the head of docketing and paralegals over at Denton. And so she was at an interesting point because they were doing the merger. And she used the merger as an opportunity to reach out to all of the other departments and ask them what their needs were. And what she found out, which was really interesting, was that a whole bunch of departments wanted the type of data that the docketing department had been capturing the whole time, right? The judge information, opposing counsel information, everything that was in their systems, right? So it had been there the whole time, and everybody had wanted it the whole time. But it's when Tara sort of started this conversation that suddenly you got use out of the stuff. So I think that's going to be exciting.
One of the revelations of this position has been is that a lot of the information that I used to spend a lot of time getting or wonder why we didn't have, we have. Different divisions are capturing tons of data about stuff. If you think about it, we know who's appeared before particular judges. We know who's been opposing counsel, right? We know what experts have testified in every single case. But that information is all sitting like in CompuLaw and it's sitting in there. And the question is, how do you get it out? And the way to do it is to obviously go to the docketing department and say, like, you guys are so valuable. How can we, work with you? What can we do with you? And that's, generally people are pretty receptive to that, right? People are receptive to being told truthfully, correctly, that they are serving, a very valuable purpose and that the information they have is really valuable and could be leveraged in so many ways that they can participate in.
Which is actually, there's an organization, the National Docketing Association, which is relatively new, but it's been bringing all the docketing folk together. And we do really see a trend in that industry of them recognizing how much information is in their systems. And then with the docketing systems that are out there, your CompuLaw, your eDockets, your Court Alert, they have had some of their time freed up by technology. And so I think the more forward-thinking ones are really looking at the ways that they can leverage their databases.
Right. We know how long our cases have taken. We know how many have ended in dismissals and how many haven't. I mean, there's so many. Like, we know all of that. It's on the docket. And in other places.
Well, and you've got your client matter number information.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys do know a lot.
We do. But we don't leverage it the way we should, but we're working on it. Law firms are still learning to be businesses. They're very
I was going to say, I think across the board, that is a huge takeaway for all of us, Catherine. So,
yeah.
I'm also noticing here we're at the top of the hour. So what I'd like to do is, in addition to thanking both Anna and Catherine for some incredibly insightful discussion and for sharing their experiences, is open the floor to anybody who may have any questions for either of our panelists. And, Anna and Catherine, I'll rely on you as you're both in the room there to let us know if there are any questions.
Come on.
I have a question, Catherine.
Yes.
You said that you were lawyer whisperer.
Yeah.
How do you work with the business development folks
Yeah.
who sort of tend to call that whispering?
I mean, it frankly, it helps that I was at the firm for so long. I mean, I'm the PSL for litigation, and I've worked with a very large number of our litigation partners, just because I've been there for so long, and a lot of them were, were associates with me. So in general, so I spent time with them, and I think I just sort of authoritatively claim that, role, and the director of knowledge management backs me up on that. And so when business development reaches out to him and wants to talk about stuff, he says, like, well, you have to include Catherine, and in fact, you should be doing this with her. So that's part of it, is that my boss backs up this being a very substantive role, which is one of the reasons I was interested in it. I didn't want to do it if it was going to be a purely sort of ministerial thing. I think you just have to have someone who has, and you can't always promote from within. So it's hard. It's hard to figure out how to do that. But in my case, it was very serendipitous. And, and hopefully that sets a standard for other PSLs. I hope that the idea is they should be involved in these kinds of, broad strategy discussions about business development and the practice. Is that responsive? That's such a lawyer thing to say. Not responsive.
It's interesting there. I mean, the opposite word is that you manage your practice.
Yeah.
But if you were new with starting that goal, how would you?
I think that would be hard, and that was kind of one of the things I sold when I wanted this position. I sold myself as saying, like, I can call these people and they will pick up the phone. Usually, they'll pick up the phone because at least they know who I am, right? And they're like, chances are that it's worthwhile to talk to this person, so I will probably pick up the phone. Whereas, like, I don't answer the phone if I don't know who it is, because they're probably just trying to sell me something. You have a question?
Well, just to follow on to that, being librarian, how often do you work with the library department? And to me, it would be better to have the business development, yourself, library, marketing, et cetera, all together, almost like a little committee discussing this stuff. Do you work with the library at all? Because we might not always have the contacts to the attorneys that somebody like you might, but we might have to contact to you being on the administrative side to say, like, here's our input, here's how.
I do work pretty extensively with the librarians, especially when it comes to considering and rolling out new tools and getting an inventory of what tools we have and how successful they've been. They've been, really helpful in terms of that. And, they have a lot of data too, right? They have communications all the time with different attorneys. So they can tell me, what problems do people tend to have with this kind of stuff. I mean, IT too. Like, I can ask them, what do you get calls about? What did they not know how to do? And that's valuable information. So yeah, I do. I mean, I worked pretty extensively with our librarians in terms of WestKM and on some other, we actually have tools that nobody knows about that, can solve a lot of problems. And I'm taking full advantage of that and rolling them out, and so I can take credit for it in conjunction with our library, so we've been working together on that. That's another big thing, is what do we have that people don't know about and that they're not using? Because they just don't know. No one's told them, at least in a way that penetrates,
And I have one other question. The 2 to 4 minute videos, are you creating a lot of those yourself, or are you taking from, like, Patient Pro and distributing them, or are you doing both? Or?
I will leverage other people's work as much as possible. So, like, that's, if we're considering a new tool, one of the things I'll say is, what kind of training content are you going to give me in the form of short, videos? That's what we want. Like, that's something we want, and that will, that will help, obviously. And we have a new director of training who's really taken on that project. But no, we're using tools to make our own. It's not that hard. I mean, there's like various animation tools and stuff like that. I think we're really working hard on making our own. There is a question of how many people we have to do it, because there's always lots of stuff going on. But So both.
Okay. That's one of the nice things about the ones that are made in-house is that, like, the ones that come from the vendors will show you how to use our platform, but when you do it in-house, then you can actually show it from your intranet page.
Yeah.
You can show any of your specific client codes, whatever else it is, and so it really takes you A to Z. Because I think one of the things you have to always assume about your end user is that they have no imagination. You know, like, that needs to go all the way through.
Yeah. You know, people who self-select into these jobs, you know, have particular capabilities, you know, and a lot of lawyers may not have the same sort of natural capabilities that you guys do, you know. So I think you do have to wise starting point. You know, you might be wrong. Hopefully you're wrong in a lot of cases, but sometimes you're not.
I don't know. So, like, now I'm at a tech company, right? And, like, we have to use, they have Slack, and then there's, like, Sococo, and there's all, like, they don't want to use email to communicate. And it is the most horrifying thing that I've ever had to deal with. And it's because I have a linear, I'm only used to, and I don't feel comfortable with these new things, but of course everybody else is used to, so you have to get on them.
Yeah, lawyers are generally very linear and not visual thinkers, at least litigation lawyers are. I don't know, you know, you deal in words, that's your job, right? You deal in narratives. That's your constant job is building a narrative. You know, I worked with some trial graphics people recently on something, and we talked about that, and they said, like, oh no, most of the attorneys I work with, they're never going to come in with ideas. That's just not how they think. And usually they want way too many words on a page, right? But that's kind of what you have to work with. That's what you have to deal with.
Yeah, it's like a translation problem.
Yeah, but it makes them good. I mean, it makes them good lawyers, obviously, right? It helps because their job is like take this complicated situation and turn it into a persuasive narrative that will let them win. So it's important to be able to think linearly in order to do that and to simplify things that way. Are there any questions?
Everyone. I was just going to say I haven't seen anything come in online, and I know we are about 7 minutes past the top of the hour. So on behalf of our call-in listeners, I'm going to go ahead and do a little wrap-up. But for those who are in the room, Catherine and Anna are going to be around and are happy to take more of your questions. So before we do that, I'd like to go ahead and thank both Catherine and Anna for being our panelists today. Again, you know, your insights are invaluable to all of us. And I also want to thank the Law Librarian Society of Washington, D.C. for hosting today's session. So thank you all very, very much. And as I said, Catherine and Anna will be around to continue answering questions. You're welcome to continue to pick their brains. So thank you, everyone.